best diet for Hashimoto's is complex, but I think I have some data-driven information for you today. So I'm McCall McPherson, PA, founder of Modern Thyroid Clinic, and I want to talk to you today about what patterns I've found that are helpful for people with Hashimoto's. So refer to my previous videos and understand why I think diet is important in autoimmune disease. Inflammation drives autoimmune disease. Diet is one of the most potent and powerful things we can control to change our antibodies, to change our autoimmunity, to change our risk for developing further autoimmune diseases. I am an advocate for getting a lot of information about what drives inflammation in your body. And I use particularly an IgG food inflammatory test to get this data on my patients. However, not everyone has access to that information. So I want to talk to you about the results I've seen over the years treating thousands and thousands of Hashimoto's patients, and maybe that can help you. So, there is definitely a pattern in Hashimoto's patients for what foods drive inflammation. So if we break it down to the most common, I would say the most common inflammatory food that I found on testing in data is dairy. So as a whole, dairy drives inflammation in autoimmune patients. Just after that is gluten. Most people suspect those would be reversed, but I did too until I saw this in the data. So number 1, dairy. Number 2, gluten. Number 3 is legumes. Number 4 is eggs. Number 5 is grains. And lastly, nuts and seeds. Now, by the time you get down to nuts and seeds, it accounts for maybe 5% of what I see in my patients. So I am all about 2 things when making diet recommendations or more for my patients. Number 1 is I want it to be informative for you. I don't want to overly restrict your diet. And number 2, I want it to be sustainable. I also don't want to ask my patients to do something I'm not willing or haven't done myself. So the likelihood that I'm going to say go autoimmune paleo for the rest of my life is not highly unlikely. It's simply not going to happen. So I don't really ask my patients to do that. You can absolutely do that to influence your antibodies if you're able to do that in a sustainable way. What I don't want is to give you all these food restrictions and then you burn out after 2 weeks because it's virtually impossible to have a normal life and be a mom and not revolve everything around food. So if you could take nothing away from this conversation today, it's take away the top 2. Try to go 3 months dairy-free and gluten-free. Measure your Hashimoto's antibodies before you start that process and 3 months later and see how they've changed. So I hope that helps.